Keynote today is with Juliana Pego, who's the Global Marketing Director at Anheuser-Busch InBev's non-alcoholic beverages. And as we bring Juliana in, let me give you a little background. She's overseeing some non-alcoholic beverage brands in South America that have both the advantages and the disadvantages of being iconic. The advantage, of course, is that they have enviable market share and total brand awareness. The downside, of course, is that they are so woven into the out-of-home daily habits of their cultures that disruptions like the pandemic have devastating impact on sales. Now, this is not just another pandemic pivot story. Hers and InBev's challenge was probably the hardest job in all of marketing, changing consumer consumption patterns and behaviors. It's a fascinating story about the ways in which they used a range of new and old digital channels to get there. Let me welcome Juliana. Hello, how are you doing today? Good to see you.
Hi, Steve. How are you? And good. Hi to everyone in Santa Barbara. I was just here wine tasting, hiking, brewery, and here we are stuck in New York, and it's so cold. It feels like it's already winter. Oh.
It is. So give us, for those who are not aware of some of these brands that you're working with, give us a little background on the geographic markets that you're working in and some of the main brands that we're going to be talking about today.
Right. So when we talk about Anheuser-Busch, obviously our mind goes directly to beer. But I'm not here to talk about beer. I'm here to talk about non-alcoholic beverages. So ABI has a pretty wide non-alc portfolio. When I talk non-alc, is also non-alc beer. We are present in more than 20 countries with our non-alcoholic beverages, and 60% of our portfolio is mostly focused on partner brands, and those are Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Red Bull, Nestle. So we're talking here about energy drinks, water, juices, CSD, malts. So this is the lay of the land for the non-alcoholic beverage unit in ABI. And so I mentioned
we have a slide that shows the two brands that we're going to be talking about. We should bring that up so you can tell us what they are.
Cool. Do we have that there?
Yep.
Yeah. So here it is. Those are the two main brands that we have in our portfolio, on our own portfolio, which means not partner brands. So for CSDs, actually, our volume is highly focused on CSDs. 75% of our own portfolio in terms of volume is CSDs. And here you see on the screen, Guaraná Antarctica is a CSD created in Brazil in 1921. So it's really inherent, and I am Brazilian. So it's really inherited in our culture, and it's really the most beloved Guaraná soft drink in Brazil. We have a really high market share. And then the other one here on my right is Pony Malta. This is a non-alcoholic malt drink, also really traditional beverage in Colombia. It's very sweet, very indulgent, and we have a very high category market share. So you see here 97%. Yeah, so this is our portfolio.
Now, these are, in particular, these two products are tightly woven into the cultures that they serve. They're super high awareness, super high usage, but a part of that also is the way that they've typically been used. So tell us a little bit about how these beverages were consumed in their host cultures, but also the kind of media plan that traditionally you used to drive their usage.
So yeah, right. Those brands, and mostly all of our brands in our portfolio, are consumed on the go. So meaning that you're going to work and you're passing by a deli, you go in and you buy a bottle of Guaraná, you buy a bottle of Pony Malta. So it's very on the go throughout your day, and used less in meal occasions because they're very indulgent, very sweet. So it's usually not paired with something else. So it's either like an afternoon snack, mid-morning snack, or like something to brighten up your day. What was the second question?
What media plan typically did you use to drive that persistent usage and persistent?
Right. So as as you mentioned before, those brands have really high awareness in the market. So we're really trying to drive more increase in volume through the current occasion, that is before COVID, which was on the go. So very focused on out of home and trade activations.
So all of that, we hit the pandemic, all of that shuts down. Not just the usual routes for reaching your audience, but also just the basic usage patterns. People were used to using these out of home. So let's talk about the ways in which things shifted. What channels and partners did you start moving into very quickly? Because I know you did suffer quite a sales decline that you had to deal with right away.
Yeah, so we had a really impact, especially early on the early months of COVID, when we were still trying to figure it out what was going on. So we shifted, thankfully, very, very quickly to digital. So before, so just so you have an idea, for this, Brazil, Colombia, and most Latin American countries are less mature markets. So we do like a lot of radio, a lot of, posters and bus stops, things like that. And we knew that people were not going around. So we had to shift it to things that they were consuming at the time. And we know that everyone was glued on TV. They were glued on their iPhones and their mobiles. So we basically shifted like 70 to 80%, depending on the brand, to TV, to mobile, and radio, and even Spotify. And then I think this was like very early days of COVID. And then after a few months, there were a lot of e-commerce platforms and delivery service popping out. We did a couple ourselves. Our data and digital team developed their own e-commerce platforms, and we're also partnering with other companies to do discounts and activations through e-commerce platforms and delivery platforms.
Yeah, one of the channels that you drove into heavily that I want to talk about here, because I think there are a lot of lessons that you guys learned from this, is TikTok. You leaned into your social influencers, and you leaned into using partners like TikTok. So tell us a little bit about, before we're going to look at an example, tell us a little bit about how you used TikTok and what you discovered about how this platform, this channel, was different from others that you were using.
Yeah, so TikTok exploded through COVID, when people were mostly bored, right? They were trying to find different things that they could entertain themselves. So we have Guaraná, the brand that I showed you before, in Brazil. This is it's very humorous, and it's very Brazilian. We have our own YouTube channel, which is the biggest YouTube channel in Brazil. And I think now we are the third or the fourth in the world. So we create a lot of content that it's highly related to the culture in Brazil. We knew that TikTok was exploding, and we needed to tag into that really quickly. So we partner with TikTok, the platform itself, to help us create our platform, sort of like transpose our YouTube platform to TikTok, but in more like small bites and more of interactive, creative content. And we exported our creative squad from YouTube, which is basically a channel. We have content every day, and we have presenters, and we took their creative squad to be sort of like a fixed squad, creating content, smaller content, to TikTok. And then we started inviting new creators in TikTok that were gaining attention for a specific trend, or they talked about something that were getting like more attention. We invited them to join our fixed squad, but coming into a more of they came like three times a week and did a content. So to drive that, not only a frequency, so we had a lot of content from our permanent squad, but also different types of topics, and just to give like a little bit of a flavor of different creators.
Let's take a look at an example, and then on the other end, I want to talk about what you were doing differently here.
Two best friends in a room, they might kiss.
Yes, we will.
What?
Yes, we will.
So what was different here than what were you doing differently here from what you were doing in YouTube, and what did you discover about sort of the key learnings from you leveraging TikTok? Because I think a lot of people out there in our audience are starting to think about using TikTok or starting to test from it. So what did you learn?
Yeah, so we learned that we have to act super quickly on trends. So this is an example of something that was everyone in TikTok was doing this specific trend. So we have our own creative agency that, you know, clipping things that are happening day and night, but we have also our internal agency that will provide an overview of what's picking up on TikTok. So we knew that that was really growing. It was actually like in the middle of it. So we tagged along and did like really quickly a content around it. And this is actually from one of our rotator creators. Not from our not from our permanent squad. The permanent squad is more about like their voice themselves. The public is used to what they're talking about. They have the sort of the same speech. Not the same. It's not that it's repetitive, but it's you wouldn't be looking for something like this from them. If you're watching a specific person, you're watching them because you like what they talk about specifically. So with this rotation of creators, we were sort of taking the temperature every day on what the TikTok consumer was wanting to consume. So give us a lot more flexibility and openness to explore the new platform.
You had this core of mainstay influencers that you stuck with, and they were giving you scale, and then you were sort of rotating in others that were giving you creative freshness at the same time. I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, because then you're keeping your base consumer that, you know, like that. They keep coming back because they like it, but then you're expanding to more target consumers, to different, not only giving them different types of content, but very fresh.
So as you were moving from all of them, from having been heavy up on out of home into these digital channels, some of them very emerging social channels, how did your KPIs change? What were you measuring and what were you optimizing against?
Yeah, so I think this is an industry problem to measure ROI when it comes to digital channels still. And we're not gonna lie to you, ABI is still struggling with it, both in non-alc and in beer brands. It's difficult. But we're trying to do with our TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram channels is to not only measure the reach of our message, but the relevance of it. So when we're taking TikTok, for instance, we are measuring a creator's reach, their engagement, but also the quality of their content. So we have an agency that will compare one creative to the other, both quant and qual, and we'll also take a look on comments. What are people talking about? Is this relevant for the conversations that is going on in Brazil? So let's say everyone is talking about some crazy thing that our president is talking about. Are we talking about that too? Like, are we inserted on the cultural relevance of the situation in the country? So that's very important for us to be cultural relevant, because this brand is so inherited in Brazilian culture that it doesn't make sense for us not to be involved in cultural aspects. But also our main passion point is to be creative. So we have to measure creative as well.
So this was just one piece of that much broader challenge, which was really to change behaviors. You had an out of home behavior that suddenly had to be in home. And it was a long 50-year tradition that actually had to be redirected. This is a big marketing lift. So I want to dig into some of the creative solutions that your brand devised in coming up with sort of introducing new patterns of consumption. Maybe the best way to do this is, I know that we have a video clip. It's a little long, but I'd like to show, because it really illustrates what the challenge was, some of the creative solutions, and then some of the results. And then on the back end, we'll talk about it. So let's take a look at the video.
this point, you must have watched over 100 video cases already. Ouch! That's why we want you to take a break watching this kitten. Okay, here we go. Just as you needed a break, the whole world needed one. In 2020, we were sent home, but home became something else. Always home office, non-stop school. We were exhausted. We needed more energy. But wait a minute, we do that. That's our thing. Pony Malta had to reconfigure the routine inside the home, changing consumers' behaviors. Introducing Malta I break! We needed to create a new occasion inside the house and remind Colombians that no matter how much they were at home, they deserved to break with Pony Malta. But we understood that a campaign was not enough to change behaviors. We built a platform that spoke to 3 different audiences, connecting with their passion points and understanding the role of each media. And also, at specific times, to shout to the whole country, "Break!" On TV, we shout, "Break from clean!" From video games. In Colombian television programs, we shout. In Spotify, we shout. From advertising, clothes shouted. Even our point of sale shouted. And instead of breaking the internet, we put internet on a break with more than 10,000 digital pieces. We became the official break alarm for a whole country. We achieved a marketing return of investment of 782%, more than 2.5% in market share, more than 9% incremental in occasion appropriation leveraged by changing behaviors, more than 6% home penetration. We increased the volume uplift with more than 11%, more than 2.5 million Colombians taking a break with our content daily, 15 million breaks taken with Pony Malta weekly. You never know what a break can do for you. Newton discovered gravity while taking one. Malta, I break!
So that was really cool. Let me make clear, one of the things that you guys were doing was actually, you were using sort of very, very time-released messages. You were telling people during the day at given points, take a break. This is the time for the break. This was a highly interactive and well-timed set of campaigns that was happening on a daily basis, multiple times a day.
Yeah, so we targeted to for our pieces to go at 10:30 every day and at 4:30, because this was actually the habit that they did before, to have the mid-morning snack when they needed, you know, a little bit of a pickup before lunch, and then 4:30, which was, you know, you have lunch and then you have the down, so you have a pony malt because it's very sugary, so it gives a lot of energy. So we targeted specifically the habit that they did before to take a break. So you're taking a break from school, from study, and then you have a pony malta. You're taking a break from work, and then you have a pony malta. So we said, well, let's take those times that they're used to have a pony malta and let's bring it inside the home, because they were having this outside of the home with a wide range of different pieces, and we were targeting adults, teens, and parents. So it was a very comprehensive platform, and you see all the results. It was great.
Yeah, I think it's ingenious to actually understand that we were in a digital immersed environment during the pandemic, and you could actually use that to your advantage to use the internet as an alert system. And actually push behaviors and move behaviors that way. Tell us some of this is one of the hardest lifts of all in marketing. And some say it's actually impossible for marketers really to change behaviors. So tell us, what were some of the key learnings about what worked here, about what you learned moving forward, about doing about making an ambitious campaign like this?
Yeah, I think the biggest learning for us was to push the boundaries. We are when you're in a very comfortable position, you have a really high market share, and everyone is drinking it because they're drinking, because it's part of their, you know, you're growing up doing that thing, so we'll continue to do it. So we were fine. We didn't think that we needed to push the limit and say, okay, how can we do better? How can we increase even more volume here? Because now what happens is when people are finally getting out of their homes and having a more or less normal life again, you would say, well, but then now they're just gonna go back to their behaviors of before, so they don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to have a pony mouth at home. But the thing is, you expanded the category. So now our next campaign is actually on air already. We're doing Pony Malta multi-packs. So instead of buying the small one that you buy on the go, you buy bigger ones. So you have it at home and you can take a break whenever you want. So it's not necessarily just that occasion. It's about like thinking how much more you can expand. And we know that, you know, changing a consumer habit, it's difficult. And I don't think it's changing it. I think it's expanding it. Most of the times for us, when we see a consumer habit, we'll say, okay, let's launch a product to talk to this consumer. But sometimes you can, you know, expand the message and fulfill the need of the consumer with the same product, just a different messaging.
I want to signal that for those of you out in Santa Barbara, we're going to take your questions in a few minutes. We're going to wrap here. Before I go on to my last question, I want to pull in a question that we're getting from the online audience from an old friend of ours, Jeff Alderman, asks, how do you use omni-channel learnings globally and across all LOBs so best practices are shared and pitfalls are avoided so your ROI is maximized? So how are these learnings being migrated across the organization?
Yeah, so what happens for non-alcoholic beverages, and I think it's very much similar for beer. We have a global team, so I sit in the global team in the GHQ in New York. So I oversee all those markets, all the 20 countries and more than 50 brands. So I know what all the markets are doing. So I'm able to direct one best practice to the other. So if I think that this break campaign can be applied in a country in Africa, I will connect with the team in Africa and leverage that best practice for them, of course, taking in consideration the similarities and the differences of each country. But it's on global to spread that word.
So we're gonna wrap here, but by leaning into where you're headed with this, because you're taking a very radical departure from Pony Malt, which is high sugar content, to health and wellness brands are going to be one part of your focus for the next year. So let's bring up just a couple of visuals that show us what those brands are. You can tell us what are a couple of these brands, but in particular, I'm curious, what lessons did you learn from these last 18 months in terms of marketing effectiveness, launching brands, keeping, you know, and what are you going to bring forward into the campaigns around these very different brands?
So we all know that during COVID, health and wellness was an unstoppable trend, that it was already happening, but just it got really accelerated. And we knew that we needed to do something, especially because our portfolio is so focused on CSDs and sugary drinks. And innovation for ABI, it's difficult in terms like we can put a product in market, but it just takes time because it's bureaucratic. We have, well, at least it was before, but we knew that we needed to take the chance and do this as fast as possible to fulfill the consumer need to have more health and wellness products. And it's different from the situation in the US that we have so many different products. When you go to Latin American countries, you have water, you have juices, and maybe coconut water. There's not many healthy drinks. So here you see on the middle and on the left, 2 drinks that we launched in Brazil in just 4 months. And usually innovation for us can take up to a year. One, a daily shot to encourage self-care, and then an antioxidant flavored water. Both of the products are really leaning on the health and wellness halo. How can it be better for you? Boost your energy with vitamins and etc. So what we learned here was to act fast. and not wait for the product to be, you know, sparkly perfect, but to launch it and interact a lot with the consumer. So the super infusions here in the middle, we changed the flavors 3 times. We put it in the market and been doing like small, we're not doing a big launch. So we did it in 1 city in like 50 POCs. And then we had a really close relationship with the POC owners and the consumer to gather feedback to improve the product. And today, 1 year after, the product is very different from the beginning, but we didn't wait to be 100% perfect to put in the market. And then the one here on the right, Fusion, it's a clean energy for gamers in China. It's also a leaning on the healthy halo, so it's non-sugar, very low, it's low on sugar, low on calories. They have vitamins. They'll help gamers, especially during COVID, that people increased a lot their hours gaming. So they needed something, you know, healthier than Red Bull. So we included vitamins, vitamin C, antioxidants, and it was the same, pretty much the same approach as the other 2 ones. We put in the market very fast. We partner with influencers and gamers and gaming platforms to launch it. We didn't do it big, but we did it very focused. So very focused to the gaming community.
Let's see, let me kick it over to Lisa out in Santa Barbara and see if we have some questions from the audience.
Oh, got a question over here. Second, just here's your wife, make sure. Hi, I'm Caitlin Asher with Asher Media. I wanted to, you talked a little bit about the KPI measurement still being challenging on digital CPG, and really talked about reach and relevance being the key aspects of that. What were some of the elements that you used to measure the relevance side?
You mean the cultural relevance, right? The messaging.
Yes.
So we have 2 agencies for our brands in Brazil. So one is our creative agency and one is our internal agency. They do a study that we have our own KPI. It's called Impact Index. And we partner with a statistical company. I'm not exactly rehearsed on all their measurements, but they're taking a look on both online and offline. How's the message resonating on articles, on posts on news? They will take all the comments that people are putting on the videos or on the post, and then they'll compare to everything that is being talked about on the country, basically in all the channels.
Okay, I actually have a question just before you go, because we had talked about this, Juliana, and you mentioned that you really went to market very quickly, and that's something that you learned, and that's not the norm. Is that something you're going to be able to continue to make happen? And how were you able to, get there so quickly and then continue doing that moving forward?
Yeah, I think we were just not used to. I'll give you a proper example. So we would run consumer panels on flavors and consumer panels on shelving placement. A lot of panels to give a sense on how the product would perform in market. And we wouldn't put in market unless we hit a certain KPI. Because we wanted to put super fast in market, non-alc beverage said, we're taking the risk. We're doing this without all the full panels that is required. And we just did it. Just rip off the Band-Aid. And then afterwards, I think because it worked and because we did it small, the company is very used to do big things. Even though it's like innovation, we do one beer innovation and we launch it in all the country. And then the fall is much higher if it doesn't work, right? If you're putting the product in all the distribution and then to recall it, it's such a complication, such a mess, and so much money that we waste, that it was much more the process was much more careful, and where you're putting a small product in a very limited distribution, where you can test with actual, like, people actually buying it, instead of consumer panels. We said, well, this is working because people are spending real money on this. So let's expand in 2 months to another city. Okay, and this another city is working. What's not working? What's working? Okay, let's expand to the third city. And then you go like building a little by little. So in 1 year, you have a full launch. You go from regional launch to full scale launch.
Oh, okay, great. Well, Juliana, that was awesome. You're really great. I love the presentation.